Welcome again to another episode of the Dialed and Driven Hockey Mentality Podcast. I'm Chris Palmer, a mental performance coach for hockey players throughout North America and Europe. This is Jeff Lerg. He's in charge of Goalie Mentors, created this and this podcast to help give you everything useful every single time. Today, we're going to talk about 5 ways that you can stay in the present moment, 5 ways that you can get what you want from this sport. Jeff, would you like to start off with anything at all?
Well, first off, this is the reason why with our podcast, we went down the path of the mentality training, mentality building, and the focus and learning how to be present in the moment is right up that alley, right up that avenue. We could sit here all day and talk about all the skills and all the technical, and I can talk from a goalie perspective about battling through screens and doing all those technical teaching points, but really that's not what gets you to the next level. That's not what makes you successful in sports and athletics. Really, and we chatted on this previously with our Dialed and Driven philosophy episode. Like, what does it mean to be dialed and driven? Well, living in the moment and being present, that's being dialed. And that's the way that you can climb the ladder in your sport. That's the way you can improve and be successful in your sport and your field. So where it starts is the training of it. And the mind, the brain, that's a muscle. It needs to be trained. It needs to be worked. And many people lose sight of that. They forget that the mind needs to be trained. You know, as a kid growing up in school, that's why you're taught to learn how to read and read books and learn how to write and do math skills. So those are the skills that you learn in your schooling, which then in sports, learning how to focus, listen, and then actively do is a skill that needs to be developed.
Yeah, so this idea of this present moment training is number one, is this idea of really trying to find things you can actually train, just like you train shots, just like you train saves. And just like you're talking about, your brain does learn from things, but the even better thing is if you do something over and over again, it becomes second nature, or it becomes a habit. Our brain is really capable of creating habits. And a great example is as a goalie, as a player. When was the last time you thought about skating? You don't think about skating because you've done so many reps. It's second nature. So now, since that's kind of taken care of on autopilot, you can actually focus on playing your game. Well, it's the same thing with present moment. Training your thoughts is a real thing, just like training shots. And we've talked before about things like meditation and mindfulness, but there's more. I know you're going to talk about this in a minute. Trying to find a way to be in the moment really is as simple as finding some space to train where you are noticing everything, where you are in this moment, literally noticing your breath. You're noticing the sound of the AC in the background. You're noticing in the locker room the sound of the skating outside on the ice, the noises that come in. Being fully aware in that moment actually helps you get to this centered spot where you feel a sense of calm. And that's great because it's a way of allowing you to be focused. But Jeff, you had a really kind of interesting thing that you're doing that maybe is a little controversial. It's this idea of doing something on your phone.
Yeah, well, first off, before I get into that, I know from my modern day, and even when I was an athlete, I do yoga every day when I wake up. So 5-6 days a week, I'll be just use an app on the phone, and it has kind of a sports yoga type movement. And one of the things I notice on there, and yoga teachers will I'm sure live by this, is breath work becomes the prevalent way to build your focus and to gain focus on your task. And so many times when these classes are starting, they have you breathe into a certain cadence. You're kind of counting your breath. How many seconds does it take? 1, 2, 3. Then you're holding it for a certain period of time, and then you're letting it go. And what that does is it obviously gets your body warmed up a little bit with the breath work, but it also makes you focus on what you're doing. It takes the outside noise and the distraction away, or it's intended to. So that's one thing I noticed that now when I'm done playing, I've done that more, and that's their way of helping you focus, and it really does. It makes all the outside noise go away. But as a player, as an athlete, I was always looking for ways to try to find a new competitive edge. And so when I was done playing my college days at Michigan State, got into the minor pro game, had a little bit more time on my hands because I didn't have to have all my studies and academics that took up most of my free time. So I don't know how I got onto it, probably just the social media advertising of kind of segmenting my wants on there. But there's a company called Lumosity, and it was a cognitive brain training. And it was advertised that, it'll help you focus and reactionary skills and perform better mentally. And I knew from the goalie position that, if I focus better, if I have quicker reactions, this is going to help me. So I bought a subscription to this company years ago. I just looked it up. It's still active, and there's actually a free model that you can download right to your phone as an app. But I used to do this brain training, I called it, as a layman's term, whether it be before practice or after practice, sometimes both. I'd take 10, 12 minutes, and they would put you through these exercises. But really, it was just a 1 minute countdown for most of those exercises, where you just had to be hyper focused on getting the job done that they described to you. And then just like every game, the faster you did it, the more correct you got during that segment, the higher your score. So it became this little internal competition. How well could I do this little reactive drill, and how well could I identify the color that was listed, or et cetera. And I know that helped my focus, because for that 1 minute, I had to be completely hyper focused on getting as many correct as fast as I could.
That makes sense. And I know people are kind of negative on the whole phone thing, right? Negative on video game types of things. But when it comes down to it, you really were present moment training there. I mean, that Lumosity thing is you really focusing and you having to make decisions and actually move your fingers very much like video games. So I think it's excesses that are the issue with video games, and using those to not deal with the things that are important in your life. But the video games themselves, or in your case, the kind of cognitive thoughts and having to react to whether something matches up or doesn't match up, it makes so much sense. So it doesn't matter so much what you do, it matters that you do. Finding ways to concentrate makes a huge difference. So that's number one. Number two is this mental rehearsal training. Mental rehearsal training, you might have heard us talk about it before, talking about vividly imagining a game. That helps so much. And we talked about it a lot in another episode, so I won't dive into it. But just as a reminder, for our number two, one of the best ways to mentally rehearse for a game is to really, really imagine fully every possible thing that can happen, good or bad. All the awful things, whether you're imagining a scout in the stands that you didn't expect to be there, or maybe it's your mom or dad, they seem upset, whatever it is, there are things that happen that way, but also imagining all the good things, imagining a rush where you were just in control and you did all the right things. So that's the second one, the mental rehearsal training. But the third one is this idea of interrupting patterns, this pattern interrupt training. Back in the 70s, you used to see guys on the bench in the NHL snapping rubber bands on their wrists. And it was a way to bring them back to this moment, to bring them back to here. Because you can imagine, even just a simple rubber band, you snap that, it hurts. And it brings you back to the little shot of pain you have in your arm. But it doesn't matter what it is. It can be that to interrupt the pattern of your thoughts, interrupt the patterns of your doubts, your worries, that I want to do this. Oh my gosh, they got the shot clock wrong. You know how many guys I talk to who are like, gosh, the count was wrong. The count was wrong. Or you're getting into almost the end of the game. You got the last 2 minutes of the game and you have a shutout going. Oh, I don't want to lose the shutout. I don't want to lose the shutout.
And then what happens?
Yeah, I know. So anything that brings you back. And one of the most useful things I do is I have somebody put something on the tape on their water bottle, or something on the tape on their stick or on their glove, something that reminds them to come back to now. And I use the example of a pro guy I used to have in Sweden who he'd be furious because in practices, he thought he should be perfect in practice, which is impossible. You can't stop every goal there. We got him past that in a discussion, but he actually put on his stick this he used a phrase, I'll just say stop, okay? But it was a little more colorful than that. He put stop on there to interrupt the pattern of being worried about how he's doing. And then the next thing he wrote was next one, just to go after his next one. And just that little phrase, that little abbreviation, every single time he's kind of losing his mind, he was able to go back to that. And it could interrupt this pattern in his head. And that's the thing. You can't stop that stuff. You can't stop that distraction, concern, desire, whatever it is. But you got to find a way to stop that, because if you don't interrupt the pattern, then it can become louder and louder and keeps you from doing your job. Those are kind of the three main things. But Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, that's why even before we had our podcast, I have this bracelet that we made at our goalie school, and we just happened to put 100% dialed in. And so we made this, as you reference it, don't have to snap it like back in the day, but the reason we made this was, it'd be cool, a little marketing deal for our goalies to wear, but also just as you're a goaltender, you could put this on, keep it on your wrist, and during a game, if you're old enough where you have the resurface in between periods, you can always kind of give something to look at. You mentioned it, put yourself back in that moment. So we always use our phrase 100% dialed in, and I still wear it and still pass those out to teenagers asking for them. But from the standpoint of the pattern interruption, I think the best thing that you can do, or one thing that worked for me, was actually to listen. Like if your coach is speaking, is practicing the skill of listening, because whatever thoughts that are running through your head, they have to go away when you're listening to the next drill at the board. So for example, if I had a really bad drill in practice and just, shot after shot went in, it's easy to get up to that whiteboard when the coach pulls everyone in and just be thinking about those last 4 or 5, 6 reps that just lit me up. But if you put yourself in the position where, okay, what is the coach saying, and actively listen. Again, this goes back to my yoga. I don't even look at the yoga coach kind of doing the movements. I'm just there listening to this yoga instructor on my phone each morning, and I'm doing the movements that are described. So that skill can be applied in your sport. If you have the ability to go listen to your coach, whether it's a practice, doing a drill, or in between periods, your coach is up there describing to the team, whether it's on the ice or in the locker room or another sport, you actively listening will help you interrupt the negative thoughts and help get you regain focus on what's taking place in the present. Because you said it, you can't control what happened in the past. Now we got to look forward to the present opportunity.
If you've never talked about the fact that your brain is always going, then you don't realize your brain's going, and you think it's you. You think you're the one talking. You think you're the one narrating, but you're not. You have this doubt, fear, worry, concern, desire instinct that's always going. It's always scanning for everything. If you spend some time, and it can be by yourself, it could be with a mental performance coach, it could be with your coach, talking about the kinds of thoughts that actually come up. And what you'll find out is that during your practices, during your games, during your life, during your drive, during brushing your teeth, your brain is constantly going. And when it's going, some of this stuff's useful and some of it isn't. But training to actually hear that part of what's going on in your head is really useful, because it makes you really aware that there's a pattern going on in your head of anything from doubt, fear, worry, concern, desire, and all those things can be really distracting when you're on the ice. So training around that, actually really just being aware that these thoughts are there, helps you realize this is a force you have to fight if you want everything you want. But you can use cues, number 4, reminder cues, to remind you that there is a battle in your head all the time between distraction and focus. And your way to get past that is writing somewhere, either on your glove or on your stick. I don't care if you can find a way to put it on a Gatorade bottle, whatever it is, something somewhere, so that you can have every single thought that comes up when you feel you're kind of in that spin, whatever that is, even if it's looking up at the shot count, oh, they got it wrong again, or it's a minute before you're getting a shutout, you're like, I don't want to lose my shutout. That's distraction, and it's normal. So using those two things, using pattern interrupt training to be aware of the fact that your brain is in another space, and reminder cues on the ice to help you actually move forward.
Yeah, and I have a little bit more of additional content on each of those. First off, with the pattern interrupt training, that's why, as I've mentioned many times, when I would play a game, I would break those games down into 5-minute segments so that I didn't feel so overwhelmed by a 60-minute game and being great and perfect the whole way through. So I always use kind of the flow of the game and every whistle as my opportunity to interrupt the pattern and reset every time. So every whistle, I would, again, kind of shut my eyes quickly and rethink of those 3 or 4 or 5 things that made me really great. And I would just remind myself of those over and over. So that didn't need to be written out. That was just using the flow of the game to kind of reset every time. But it was my routine. And anyone who ever watched me play could tell that I was always resetting in between. Like the girls would come out and scrape the crease. I'd be playing in the minor pros. There'd be girls scraping the crease 2 feet from me, and I'd have my head buried down, rethinking about intensity, quickness, focus. So I'd be going through my routine, but it just helped me reset every time. And then separately, with prior to going out to every practice and game, I would always have those cues up on top of my locker. So I'd be in my stall, in our hockey locker room stall. There's always obviously the top where you'd put your glove and your helmet up there. I'd put those 6 to 7, 8 cues that made me really good as a goaltender: aggressiveness and quickness and flexibility, athleticism. I remind myself of those before a practice. I'd say them quickly, and on a game day, I'd probably say them 50 times. And then Zamboni would be coming on between periods. I'd look at those right when I first sat down, and then I'd look at those again right before I went back out. And many other teammates had different but also common routines where it'd be on their stick, it'd be on their glove, it'd be somewhere where they'd have to go back and use it for their future kind of reminder. Many players that are just sitting on the bench in between shifts, that was their time as they're sitting there, their stick's right out in front of them, so they could use that on the back of their stick as their reminder.
So tell me, when you were playing, haven't there been games where you had 2 or 3 bad things happen in a row? What kind of stuff do you do to reset from that? Because that's the awful part. Very commonly, I'll work with people and they'll be fine at the beginning of the game, and then there's this spin out. And it only takes a couple of things. Sometimes there's 2 goals in 22 seconds. It's hard to bring yourself back. What kind of stuff did you actually think, or what kind of routine did you do? What cues did you have, or what did you do to bring yourself back to this present moment?
I mean, Chris, I played long enough to have pretty much everything happen, whether it's a goal in the first 5 minutes to letting up double-digit goals. I've let up 10 goals in a game before. But after every goal, I would still go back to my routine of taking the puck out of the net, sip of water, cleaning the crease, go over the things that made me good, because that was the only way I found to be able to have success, because that helped you, keeps you even keel and kind of take the scoreboard away from it. Because the other end of that is you could be having a really good game and not do those reset moments. You might be thinking about how great you're playing, or if you're having a bad game, you might be thinking how bad you're playing. So I'd always use those same kind of pattern interrupt mechanisms or cues, visual cues, written cues, mental cues, to stay focused, just to stay present within the moment. And that was my way of never getting too high, never getting too low. And that was just my way. I've mentioned it. Like it could be a game of where I had, nerves going and super anxious. And the only way that I could kind of calm myself down was through the breath work and kind of resetting on the things I could control. And that can be applied to every sport. I mean, you watch players before they come out of the tunnel for a game. They have some sort of routine. Some players are body checking one another or doing some funny handshake. Some people might view that as a superstition, but I view that as that's their way to kind of snap into it. Okay, now it's time to go. Now it's time to play. Like I watch the Netflix series on pro tennis players where they all have a routine they're doing in the hallway before they get their name announced. Same thing on the track and field athletes. They all have this kind of this reset or prior to competition routine where they're doing something and then they're going out to compete. Noah Lyles, who's that 100 meter, 200 meter world champion, like he jumps up as high as he can and he basically runs down the track, 50 meters before he turns around. Like he has to get himself psyched up. Like he goes crazy, screaming at the top of his lungs while the people next to him are like, what's this guy doing? Like he's embarrassing. But to him, that's his way to get into it and to get in the present moment.
Well, you're actually talking about number 5, and that's what we call the develop and enter the ice ritual. And I think of this thing as sacred ground. I think of the ice as sacred ground. And if it's something where you're just kind of goofing around, your brain doesn't associate high performance, high reward. It associates it as a place you're casual sometimes and dialed sometimes. And everybody wants to be the absolute best they can be. Your whole life changes in a shift or a rush. So developing some kind of enter the ice ritual, like you're talking about, is a big thing. You'll see pictures even in football, soccer. You see Cristiano Ronaldo. You'll see videos of him actually talking, and the guys who lip read say he says things like, "I am good, I am strong, things come to me, I'm successful, shooting comes easy to me." These kind of affirmations. I forget his name. I think is it Jokic or Jokic? I think is his name. He's an amazing tennis player. He'll sit in between when he comes actually right before he gets out onto the court. You see him kind of talking these affirmations, and not fluffy things, but real things about he's ready to go. But having an enter the ice ritual And one of the things I train people to do is really think just the moment your blade touches the ice, it's like turning a switch on. You all of a sudden are going out there to give everything you have. Some people, we talk about putting on a cape. Just imagine yourself as a superhero, creating an alter ego, whatever that thing is. But this thing where when you go out there, you become this person that doesn't have doubts, doesn't have fears, manages everything, is always overcoming. Developing something like that is a huge thing. But tell us about your thing, because I think, wasn't Batman one of your alter egos, or people?
Well, no, that was just a visual. When I'd always have one of the routines I had before every penalty kill was I'd kind of put myself through a stretching routine. I'd hang on the back of the net, and then just coincidentally, when I was in Toledo in the AA pro ranks, we were wearing a Batman themed jersey. They had to do a lot of gimmicks to keep everyone engaged. So it was just a picture of me as Batman, so to speak, like in that jersey. But that was more one of those reset routines and working to stay present. Okay, now it's a penalty kill. But I mean, I had a ton of little things I did, but it was all within what you just described. It was that on ice ritual. Like when it's time to play, it's time to play. Like the analogy I always had for myself would be almost like a music artist who has this big stadium filled up, and they have this artist go on before them to kind of set the tone of the event. And then there's this big kind of hoopla waiting for them. And then eventually, like, they come flying out on the stage and the place is going nuts. Like, that's what it was like to me, what I had to envision myself. Like, the second that puck drops, I have to have that amount of emotion and intensity and focus on what I'm trying to accomplish. And that can be, every athlete, every sport will have these different kind of nuances and routines. But that's that ritual that we're discussing. Like, what do you do before you get out there to get yourself, your mind, your mental state, your emotional state fired up? And a lot of that's just playing with it, trial and error. And for me, that was my routine, and it was just trying to find a way. And many, really, what can be applied to all sports is sometimes you might be too amped up, and it's taking those 3 deep breaths. Okay, recenter yourself, refocus, think about what you're going to go out there and do, and then kind of explode out onto your playing field, whether it's running or sprinting or skating, however you get out there.
You got to tell me this thing again, though. Tell me this thing before each penalty kill. You later in your career did this thing where you would actually hang on the net. Is that correct?
Well, that was the one benefit of being the shortest goalie playing, is that no one else could do this little routine. The net's only 4 feet high. I'm only 5'5". 5.5". Many of these bigger goalies couldn't do this. So I don't know. Like, whenever I was a younger goalie playing, I was always on a really good team. So sometimes I'd go periods of time without getting action on me. So I just started to make up these little movement routines and patterns to kind of keep myself loose and busy and to keep my mind ready. So at some point along the way, I just kind of made up, okay, a penalty kill. This is like a big moment for the goalie. You got to be ready. I would clean my crease up, and then I would get a sip of water, and then I don't remember the exact point, but at some point I kind of had my arms hanging on the net. So I would almost be parallel with the crossbar. And then I became stronger upper body, core strength. And then it kind of became my little calling card. Like, okay, when's this Lerg guy going to flail on the net? Because no one else does that. And then you get to bigger stadiums, and like in college hockey, thousands of people in there. And then they kind of take note of it. And then pro hockey, same thing. So I honestly didn't do it for the sake of others. It was like, it's a penalty kill. I'm a little superstitious, and I know I've always done this, so this is what I do. And then, the fans obviously took the Batman thing to another level, but that was just all part of this little focus thing, right? Now, just kind of finding new meanings to stay focused.
But it's really cool, though, because in a way, you're getting in the head of the other guys. I mean, the fans are all going nuts, and you're doing this thing. It must look crazy that you're doing this hang thing, and penalty kill, big thing, right? It's got to be a distraction for them, and they have to find a way to keep their head straight. So going into kind of review on this thing, there's really 5 things we want to give you, 5 things you could do right now. And one, if we can find a way for you to get in the present moment by doing any number of things, whether it's meditation, some people call it mindfulness, just finding a way to do breath work, anything where you can be right now. And your breath work you had mentioned was very specific to you, but some breath work is as simple as box breathing in the Navy SEALs. It's 4 seconds breathe in, hold for 4 seconds, let the air out for 4 seconds, pause for 4 seconds, whatever it is. It's just giving you something to concentrate on. And as you showed in your career, you got better at it over time, not too high, not too low, and you built these mental habits that became second nature nature a lot of times. So number one, present moment training, some way to focus, meditation, mindfulness, breathing. Number two, mental rehearsal. Any kind of mental rehearsal training where you're really imagining the entire practice ahead of time. You're imagining the entire game ahead of time so that when it happens, it's not a surprise. You're ready. It's as if you've already done it. Number three, pattern interrupt training. Any kind of discussion with you, your coach, your friends, by yourself, talking with a mental performance coach, to really realize how much thought there is in your head all the time. And once you're really aware that in your head, when you're playing, there's a battle between this kind of automatic chatter and the focus you really want. Number four, reminder cues. Somewhere, somehow, have a cue somewhere that reminds you of what you're trying to do. Like we talked about the guy in Sweden, he wrote down stop and he wrote down next one that helped keep him focused from moving forward. He put that on his stick, but you could put it anywhere. And the last one is really kind of developing, number five, developing an enter the ice ritual where you're actually trying to enter the ice with a really specific intention. It's not just, hey, I'm going out there, but hey, I'm ready to go. My skate blade's on the ice. I'm now becoming this person, or I'm going back to this focused person, but somehow, some way, make it special coming onto the ice. And it'll be the habit of something special happens out there.
And really, from that standpoint, it's a skill that needs to be practiced. That's the last summary piece. I mentioned how I did this brain training. I mean, you can do a word search or a crossword puzzle and find a newspaper. I know that's a little bit old school, but practice your brain having to focus for periods of time. You know, CEOs of business call it time blocking. What are they going to do for this next half hour? What piece of work, or for our athletes that are in school, what piece of your schoolwork are you going to study for the next hour only? How can you really be dialed into that task and get all the distractions out of sight, out of mind? So it's a skill that needs to be practiced. And the more you do practice it, the more you'll find your own little nuances that are going to help you peak for when the time matters. And you mentioned habits many, many times. What I want to remind our listeners, or what I want to let our listeners know, is that we've created the 5 Champion Habits for Youth Athletes guide. We'd love to send that to you for free if you want to send us a message on our social account at Dialed and Driven on Instagram. We'll get back to you. We'll ask for your email address and we'll send you our 5 Champion Habits guide, because we're all about trying to help you achieve your personal success. And so as a reminder, stay dialed and stay driven on your goals, as that's the only way to accomplish your true success.
Again, the Hockey Mentality Podcast, Dialed and Driven.